everyone. Anthony Fantano here, internet's busiest music nerd. Hope you're doing well. And this is another edition of the most inconsistent music podcast on the internet, the Needle Drop Podcast. But we are doing our due diligence here and sticking to our well-loved annual segment, the worst rappers in the game. Usually we go over every year a list that you guys pretty much put together. I crowdsourced this list asking you what are the worst rappers in the game right now, in the game currently. You tell me your opinions. You list them all out. I pick the most suggested rappers and I go over them with my dude D-Respect here. How you doing, man?
I'm good.
D-Respect is a fellow YouTuber, music critic, a culture commentator who makes very good comment on who makes very who makes very good content over on his YouTube channel, which we will link you to down below in the description box. Thanks for coming on again, man. Thanks for making the time for me. I know you're super busy. You're just fucking, really hitting the slums over here hanging out with me.
It's always a pleasure. We do need to clarify that this is crowdsourced because there's always 2 to 3 people that you and I would definitely never throw into the list. So we always have to.
Well, we're gonna argue against that. So
okay,
even though there are rappers on here that it's not our decisions here. We're gonna argue against that. So obviously we're going over this list saying, hey, these rappers are on here because you guys have decided that these rappers are awful. But if we disagree with whether or not these rappers are awful enough to make this kind of a list, the worst rappers working right now currently, we're gonna argue against that. We're gonna get confrontational. Okay, we're gonna rationalize, and let's kick it off with a real heavy hitter in the world of hip hop music right now, Mr. Lil Pump.
Mm-hmm.
So, Lil Pump generally, opinions of his music, opinions of the whole South Florida SoundCloud set.
Yeah, Lil Pump, to me, he catches a lot of flack, obviously, with his comments that he has for another particular rapper that we'll get to on the list. But I think he catches a lot because I think Lil Pump hits all of the caricature sort of like the points that you have to hit. You've got to hit the hair. You've got to hit the gold chains. You got to hit the fake money in the video, like in the Escada video. He hits all of the, it kind of reminds me of what people felt like Trinidad James was, because people thought for a period of time when Trinidad James came out with All Gold Everything, they felt like he was doing some form of like satire. I don't know if Trinidad James was actually doing that, if he's that intelligent to do something like that, but I doubt it. But I feel that Lil Pump is that's really coming through in his music. It's really coming through in his videos. And I actually think that Lil Pump has a lot of technical ability. So I wouldn't even group him up with a term that's becoming a little outmoded. The mumble rap term, it's getting a little old. And I don't think it applies for Lil Pump necessarily.
Yeah, I think the mumble rap thing is really more of a mini genre or a subgenre rather than just a literal description of what a rapper may be doing. I mean, certainly there are rappers out there who kind of don't rap that well. They slur their speech a little bit. And of course, maybe there's like some extra effects or auto-tune on their voice, which really kind of add to this very, mumbly sound or mumbly delivery. But Lil Pump's words, they're actually pretty clear a lot of the time. So, I mean, he's not literally mumbling, but I sort of see what you're saying. Like, he does sort of check all of these boxes for the type of rapper who doesn't really elicit the kind of respect that like a Mos Def does, for example. He doesn't seem very well read. I guess like it doesn't seem like he pays much attention to the
for
world
a Harvard
around
grad,
him.
especially.
Yes, for a Harvard grad, it's a little.
It's disappointing.
It's a little disappointing. It's a little disheartening for a Harvard grad to sort of be as ignorant of the world around him as Lil Pump seems to be on the outset. However, I mean, he seems to be making the kinds of business decisions that somebody in his position should. I think there's probably, even if he's not the smartest guy in the room, I think he's paying someone near him to be the smartest guy in the room. Maybe maybe that person is getting something over on him monetarily at the end of the day. We don't really know. But he does sort of seem to check a lot of boxes where, yeah, sure, he doesn't have a whole lot to his lyrics in terms of substance or meaning, but there's also just how ridiculously he dresses, how he handles himself. And, you know, I think he's definitely an example of, which there are at least a few on this list of rappers now who, do you think people hate Lil Pump for his music more than they hate him for how he looks or just how they think he acts? Because I think
it's how he. I don't think the way he acts is really. I mean, he's sort of dismissive with everything on every topic. Every time you see Lil Pump, he just throws in a scat blanket over everything, whether it's getting dissed by somebody or just being caught by TMZ out somewhere. I don't think it's anything that he has to say. He's not violent. He doesn't portray some image that I think is necessarily damaging to the youth. But it's the look, and it's also the fact that Lil Pump is he's younger than all of the counterparts that I think an older hip hop fan would group him up with. Like Lil Uzi's in his early 20s. Even somebody like Ugly God is 21. I know there's not a big separation in age, but in this day and age, there's for whatever reason, there's a big difference between a 17-year-old and a 22-year-old. You know, you're an old nigga if you're 22. But he's so young, and I just feel like he represents something, like the irreverence of just everything. I don't think he does anything wrong. Other than the fact that, you know, has Lil Pump ever made any statements about an old, did he join that group? Did he join the likes of Lil Xan? I don't remember. You get all these guys confused after a while. Did he say anything crazy?
I mean, I know he did a little shot at J. Cole, who, you know, we're going to be talking about later, but I don't really think he's paid much attention to like old heads or older hip hop or anything like that. But I feel like with a lot of these people who hate on artists like Lil Pump, it's almost like that reaction to guys like him is almost built into the dislike for him, because they just sort of assume, with the lack of reverence for that era of hip hop that pours through in his music, that he probably, you know, hates Biggie and Tupac anyway. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So now I feel like there's almost like that generational prejudice, like across the board, being labeled, sort of being applied to a lot of these new up and coming rappers, regardless of whether or not they have a legit quote or an interview out where they're just like, yeah, this rapper sucks or that rapper sucks or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think they'd be wrong. They'd be wrong to assume that he's not equipped with at least the basic tools of having clarity on a song, because he's definitely equipped with it. He shows it. I mean, I may not be a fan of the beat choices and whatever melodic shit he's trying to do, but they'd be wrong to assume that he's just the absolute bottom of that whole group.
No, I mean, me personally, I like a lot of Lil Pump's music. I mean, I constantly get shit on or at least I did for a bulk of last year. It's kind of dwindled off a little bit this year, and has it's kind of been replaced with some other records that I've given positive reviews to that people are mad about. But yeah, I got a lot of shit last year for just enjoying his self-titled mixtape, and you know, I just love his energy. Like you said, he's not really that mumbly. He's pretty clear on a track. He could put together a super catchy hook. And on top of it, I just kind of like his turn up, tune out vibe. I mean, obviously that's not the way somebody I think should conduct themselves in the world 24/7. Obviously, if you do that, you're just a fucking moron. But the thing is, like, for entertainment value, like, it can make for a good song. It can make for a great track. It can make for a fun mixtape. And people are sort of like reacting to him so negatively, as if there hasn't been any rappers out there recently who have this very same message, or that there hasn't been like a ton of pop music or rock music that has come out in the past that pretty much has the same exact ethos. It's like we're just constantly getting like, I don't know. It's like the older generation matures and they forget about all that like crappy turn up music from their youth. And then when the new generation does it in a totally different way, it's like, oh my God, I can't believe it. What is this non-lyrical, stupid, dumbed down music, you know? And it's like, come on, man. Like, every generation has had like turn up music. Every generation has had it. Like, it never sounds the same. It always sounds different. But the thing is, I feel like that's part of the reason that the previous generation reacts to it so negatively. It's like, oh, well, it sounds bad this time because now the sound is different. But the thing is, like, to your parents, your turn up music sounded like shit, you know? So I feel like it's just kind of the natural order of things, and I feel like Lil Pump is hated more for what people think he is, or just sort of, you know, see that he is just by the way that he conducts himself, as opposed to like the music that he actually makes. I mean, I could sort of understand if you're not the type of person who listens to super poppy, super lowest common denominator, super straightforward, super blunt, you know, type of music. You like something with a little more nuance, a little more depth generally across the board. I get that. I understand that. You know, if you're the type of person who hates Lil Pump, but you also would never listen to a Soulja Boy, or you also would never listen to, I don't know, like what's another example off the top of your head?
Listen to Soulja Boy if you would listen to Young Thug.
Yeah, like you would never listen to a Young Thug either. Like, I get it. I understand. But you know, if you think Lil Pump singularly is like somehow like the worst of the worst of the worst when it comes to this trend, this sound, this style, this ethos, this idea, I don't know. I just think you're sorely mistaken. I don't think he's like the one of the worst rappers out there right now. Because I think as far as like instrumental choice, in terms of song structure, in terms of just basically the baseline necessities for what would make a catchy and a listenable song, yeah, I think you could do much worse. I think you do way worse than Lil Pump.
I think the name also has a large thing to do with it too. I mean, the name is a brand. It's a brand altogether. It's a franchise, and that doesn't help. That doesn't help with the overall just introduction to the artist. The fuck is this? Another Little? Like that's all it takes. Not even the music at all or the look. It's just the name itself can just it triggers people. It definitely does trigger people.
No, it does.
And he's the only Little on the list, by the way.
Oh yeah, that's true. He is the only Little on the list. Yeah. I think he's the biggest Little right now. Is there a bigger Little?
No, there's not a bigger. I mean, this guy got a parody on SNL. I mean, you know,
that is true. Him and Migos.
Yeah. So he's the biggest. He's the biggest out of the single Littles. He represents everybody. Yeah, he's the biggest.
He's the biggest Little. Yeah. He's at the top of the Little chain right now. All right, let's move on to the next suggestion that was here on that list. Unless you feel like you have anything else really to say about Lil Pump and his music.
About Lil Pump, no, nothing else to share. Eshkada.
Next, let's talk about Playboi Carti. Somebody who I reviewed positively recently, and I did get kind of a mixed reaction from that. Like, there were a lot of people who were sort of like, what, like it, that building up to the release of my review were like, oh man, Anthony Fantano's going to give it a not good. Anthony, I can feel the red flannel coming. Oh my God. And then like, after the review actually dropped, of course, there were a lot of negative reactions to that, but simultaneously, a lot of people were just like completely erupting into a frenzy who just assumed I was going to hate it because I wasn't that crazy about his last tape. There was even this kid who like sent me a screenshot of his group chat with his friends, and his friend had said like something like, "Thank God the voice of black culture gave Playboi Carti a 7." Like, what? So, I mean, I'll come in with my opinion.
For all colored people.
Yeah, apparently. So I'll come in with my opinion, which some people listening may already be aware of because of my review for Die Lit came out pretty recently. But trying out Playboi Carti's music, you know, I'm sure you've heard Magnolia. I'm sure you tried out some stuff from the new record. Like, what are your impressions of him generally? Is he a rapper who you think deserves to be sort of like on the current worst in hip hop type list?
Yes, I do.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think because accompanied with I've never been a fan of the minimal sort of instrumentations. I've never been a big fan of that, even though I do like I do like Magnolia just like everyone else did. But that, along with someone that I would define as a mumble rapper and still doesn't really have much clarity in words and it doesn't put a lot of emphasis in it, with those things together, I would put him in the category of somebody who's deserving to be on the list. Now I didn't listen to Die Lit. I've just listened to singles of Playboi Carti. That's all I've been able to get a hold of. I didn't listen to Die Lit, but I saw that you did give it a 7, which was a surprise. And I'm glad that you spoke for everyone. but I would say that he should be a part of the list because of that reason. Because it's just not a lot of effort.
Yeah. No, I would agree as far as like the technical aspects with which we would judge a good rapper versus a bad rapper. I would say technically, I do think he probably would deserve to be on, you know, like a list like this because, you know, let's just look at it from the standpoint of, you know, just his XXL freshman cypher and sort of freestyle performances, you know what I mean? Like, which were just absolutely awkward and trashy and annoying and just like totally useless. You know, the thing is, Playboi Carti, I think he only really kind of works in a particular kind of context, you know what I mean? Like, to me, I enjoy some of his singles and I enjoyed a lot of Die Lit, but is he somebody who, like, if I see him featured on a song, am I like dying to hear it? Like, oh man, this has got a Playboi Carti feature. I gotta hear this shit. Like, not really. Like, am I really like sitting there with my mouth watering, thinking that Playboi Carti's about to like come on and fucking kill it? Like, fucking kill this beat. Oh man, he's totally gonna fucking steal the show on this song. No, I mean that's like not really his thing. That's not really his shtick. That's not really his style. Put him in a room with a battle rapper, he'd be fucking eaten alive. You know what I mean? So there are so few contexts in which I think Playboi Carti as an artist actually works, and really that's on his own music. And I wasn't really all that wowed or impressed with a lot of his older material outside of Magnolia either. But I feel like on this new record, he kind of honed and distilled, I guess, a lot of those elements, or sort of isolated rather, those elements that made Magnolia so good. And that is just more minimal instrumentation, more psychedelic effects, more hypnotic repetitions, so that the tape kind of has an overall very druggy, kind of very intoxicating feel to it. In a lot of ways, it's entirely different technically and stylistically, but in a way it kind of took me back to A$AP Rocky's big breakout debut tape, which, if you also remember, like, people were tearing apart because it's not that lyrical. He's not that lyrical. Dude can't freestyle for shit.
Plus, he's from New York, and that makes it even worse.
Absolutely. Makes it even worse. In the case of Playboi Carti, I feel like a lot of those same, I guess, shortcomings also come into play, but in a way they're even worse. But simultaneously, I feel like Die Lit is even more psychedelic than A$AP Rocky's newest record. I just feel like a lot of the album is all about just like pure bliss and euphoria, and I like that about it. But the thing is, like, only part of the appeal of that comes down to Playboi Carti's rapping. I feel like a lot of it has to do with just the sound of his voice, some of the weird vocalizations he makes, again, the effects, the production. So again, would I ever want to listen to Playboi Carti like completely outside of the context of an instrumental? No, probably not. But I do feel like it does need to be mentioned. I do feel like he does make good songs. I do feel like he does appear on interesting, minimal, somewhat experimental, and kind of trippy rap tunes. And I like that about it. I like that. Clearly, even though he's not much of a rapper, he's making a conscious decision to make this type of sound and this type of music, because there aren't a whole lot of rappers out there who I think sound exactly like him. You could argue that he's run off of a lot of trendier sounds out there, and certainly he is. But I think that he's doing a very specific thing within this sort of very kind of low-key, hypnotic, auto-croony type trap stuff.
Okay, let me ask you a question. So we're putting him in his proper context. If obviously his music it's very druggy. It's very, the word that always gets thrown around with this kind of sound is like the vibe. I like the vibe of the music. I like the way it made me feel. Yeah. Well, let me ask you a personal question. Do you do any sort of recreation, any sort of drugs at all? Do you drink anything?
No, I can't say I do. And I've given, vaguely, I guess, positive reviews to some artists, and also negative reviews as well, who also, it seems like the whole point of their music is just to strike up some kind of vibe. I think Ray Shremmer does that, though obviously they're a little bit more lyrical, if you could use that word, than Playboi Carti. I think Future's music also exists pretty much solely for that purpose. Although I've never been really as crazy about Future's voice and his delivery as I have sort of what Playboi Carti is doing here.
Okay. Well, I mean, I would think that being that the music has that sound, you see, because even when I was, say, 25, for example, and whatever music, I guess when I was 25, I'm not sure if I can pinpoint what this music is derived from. If I could vaguely point in a certain direction, I mean, I would probably have to point at Lil Wayne would be something that this would really have been generated from. And when it came to music that was psychedelic, I just never liked the trance that it's supposed to put you in, and it's supposed to sort of hold you into some like some dumbed down sort of malleable version of yourself. And it just, to me, it just never spoke to me. And so when I hear music like this, it just gives me sort of like this feeling of there's an attempt to put kids in a certain mood. There's an attempt to make kids more I'm not sure if I'm getting to anything. Help me out here.
Just make them just dull the senses, or just sort of
just dull the senses so much to the point that like, how much of a vibe are we really discussing? How much of a vibe are we really discussing that the music puts you in? That a Playboi Carti record puts you in. And this can be said about several of the artists that we're going to discuss. It could be said about several about them. And for example, after the passing of Lil Peep, I went in and I listened to Lil Peep's tape, and I just couldn't help it. But I don't know who would be enjoying this music other than somebody who is constantly in an induced coma of just lean or whatever the fuck it is that they do. And he belongs on this list because, and there doesn't have to be thought to all the music that you listen to. I understand that there doesn't have to be thought to it. It doesn't have to be thought provoking or everything, but there's just a certain level. There's just a certain level of being awake for something that I think that's required. That I think he belongs to be on this list.
Yeah, again, I mean, for what we traditionally know to be a rapper and sort of the requirements that one would need to, the boxes one would need to check to sort of be like an impressive, talented rapper, I think Playboi Carti falls monstrously short. So, if somebody put Playboi Carti on their worst rappers list, I wouldn't necessarily just outright disagree. But as, I guess, sort of an aesthetic curator, if we could call Playboi Carti that, I enjoy his music, and I can think of, rock songs or psychedelic rock songs or psychedelic metal songs that are really in a lot of ways even more repetitious than what Playboi Carti has presented here. Like let's say Sleep's Dope Smoker, which is this like hour-long sort of stoner metal track with very little in the way of like sort of alterations to the sound or the riffs across the entirety of the song. Also, Earth's Earth 2, which is like a legit drone metal album where they just literally crank the amplifiers up and they just kind of like meditatively jam on these single like heavy, very slow riffs to sort of create this psychedelic effect. And I've loved those records. I've loved those bands. I don't want to say Playboi Carti is like, some kind of a amazingly deep innovator who's sort of like making music that is so beyond.
No, of course that.
Because like let's say for example, you could also argue that like there are quite a few psychedelic tracks on Quemini, or Shabazz Palace's Black Up is really psychedelic. That's an incredibly psychedelic album, but also it's much more interestingly produced. It's much more lyrical. So making music that's psychedelic doesn't necessarily mean it has to be dumbed down. It doesn't mean, there are obviously shades to this. You can make really highbrow, interesting, experimental, cutting-edge psychedelic music. I think Playboi Carti is merely taking a lot of these more trap and more simplistic pop rap sounds that are just current right now and kind of bringing them a bit of a psychedelic tinge, which I think just really works for him and just works in general. You know, will it work 5 or 6 years from now when this trend is gone and it's totally obliterated and basically whatever we're listening to now has been replaced by a new wave of something else? It'll probably make less sense.
Yeah, it's always an adjustment. There's always an adjustment period for this for this kind of music because all of the music that I loved so much was just all about that affirmation. It was just all about the your sort of like head nodding to the song, and you kept at a certain pace that this music just doesn't do for me. That it doesn't do. And of course you had music back then that was, you know, the production was more psychedelic, and I don't think the intent was totally there because these people weren't promoting that. But if the sound sort of lent itself to that, then I think that makes it more, it was non-forced. Whereas if your intent is to talk about it and make it sound like it, then it's like you're specifically I'm trying to put you in a vibe. I'm trying to put you in this, you know, sort of this drug-induced coma. But I mean, of course, but the Playboi Carti, he's not gonna, you know, he's not winning a Pulitzer anytime soon.
All right, let's talk about the King of New York next. One Mr. Tekashi 6ix9ine, who, I mean, you have to love the Day 69 mixtape, right? I mean, mixtape of the year, best thing you've ever heard in your entire life.
I enjoyed it more than I thought I would.
Oh,
actually.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, definitely enjoyed it more than I thought I would. It's, you know, it's a shame that you know, the antics that he pulls off, which is, you know, it's gotten him a lot of attention, but there's quality here. There's definitely quality here. I think 6ix9ine, a lot of his songs do sound the same, but at least what you could say is it's his own particular sound. You know, maybe with the exception of Gotti, which you know doesn't sound anything like his other singles, but all other 3 or 4, the Gummo, the Billy, they all sound alike, but it's his particular sound. And it's what we love here in the city. It's just nonsensical gun music. That's all it is.
I mean, there are certainly a few other rappers out there who I could name who have a singular sound kind of like he does, but it's also very exciting. It's very aggressive. It's screamed. It's, you know, hyper violent. And certainly he's not alone in this trend, but he definitely has kind of a certain aesthetic in this style, in this wave. And another thing I'll say is I think that a lot of his earlier singles were a lot more kind of weird and out there and a little edgier and a little bit more almost like nu metal style in a way. Whereas like these days, I feel like he's kind of toned that down a little bit and has gone into a bit more of a predictable, you know, kind of turning the rock influences down a little bit on his latest stuff. Now, me personally, I probably would put him on this list. I just find him obnoxious. And just from a musical standpoint, I mean, there are a few tracks here and there, like I could probably take 6ix9ine pretty easily in small doses. But just like in general, would I want to listen to him? Like when I hear a 6ix9ine feature, do I get excited? No. Would I want to hear 6ix9ine off of a beat? No, absolutely not. Most of the time I barely want to hear him on a beat. And it's gotten to the point where, you know, maybe some of his earlier singles were kind of thrilling and exciting for me, but even when I hear a new single today, it just sort of sounds like the same shit, man. It just sort of sounds like he's kind of just stuck himself into a rut. Absolutely. And I don't know, it's just really like a huge turnoff for me. Just the same delivery, same instrumental style, and I just feel like he doesn't really have a whole lot in the tool belt to sort of push himself going forward. I mean, you obviously dig his music a little bit more than me. Do you think he has a future in the next 2 or 3 years?
No, he doesn't have a future in music, and I think he's very aware of that. I think he's aware that he's not going to last, and which is why he has to pull all these stunts to get more attention to himself. I think he figures if it's not broke, I'm not going to fix it. I'm just going to keep on, because otherwise I can't keep bragging about how many #1, you know, singles I have in streaming and all this shit. I can keep creating the same music. And the only thing that I'll say to his credit is like I said, it's every song sounds the same, but there's so many artists right now that sound exactly alike, but they sound like 10 other people, but there's nobody who sounds exactly like 6ix9ine and just screaming over a track like that. Not that I never expected myself to be a fan of that. And as a matter of fact, I think I'm harder on most artists because I'm from New York and I'm a snob. So I'm harder on New York artists more than anything. So I'm very surprised that with the antics that he pulls, he still makes music that I actually enjoy. You know, his songs are relatively short. It's in and out. I mean, Billy sounds just like one big chorus. That's what it sounds like. So, you know, that may be a tactic with streaming and all that shit, but I think he knows he doesn't have a future. I don't see that happening.
I think with artists these days, newer up-and-coming artists who sort of get by doing what a guy like Tekashi does, when your fans are mostly just super hype on your singles, I feel like that almost, thanks to streaming, has become just a new business model. You know what I mean? Like, there isn't as much pressure when you're a single-centric artist to put out that many songs that sound all that different. It sort of just seems to make sense to make sure that every song kind of sounds the same. Because Tekashi had, I mean, how many years did he have where he was kind of popping and he had lots of viral singles, but he didn't even have an album or a tape out yet? You know what I mean? So it's almost like just dropping singles can almost just, again, be a business model now. Let me ask you one more thing about Tekashi before we move on. I mean, certainly when we were growing up, there were instances of, you know, rappers getting into all kinds of antics or shenanigans or saying some wild shit or dressing eccentrically, or, you know, you have backstories like, oh, you know, how many times did 50 Cent get shot, so on and so forth, to kind of build interest in the artist outside of their music. You know what I mean? But these days it sort of seems like doing ridiculous shit to get attention has almost reached a saturation point. Do you feel like it's worse than it used to be, better than it used to be? Do you feel like the internet and social media has something to do with it? Or is it just pretty much the same as it's always been, and it just seems like maybe it's worse because we're getting exposed to it more because there's so many rappers out there, there's so many social media accounts, there's so many Instagram videos?
Yeah, I think it's the same as it always was, but obviously now it's a bit different because I think it makes the artist lazier. If an artist can reach 500,000 people with a short 14-second clip of them just doing some random, I mean, so many Instagram comedians are using that as a way to get into music, because I think in their eyes, the content is the same. Making a song, I'll be able to reach these many people. If I put out an Instagram video, I can do this in 14 seconds. I can reach so much of you, and I could just do something stupid that'll be shared. But what happens is the music suffers because of it. The music suffers because why should I have to put any effort into my music when I can get your attention through this? And then I can just use the music as a platform, and I'm out in 3 to 4 years because I got a reality show, or, you know, I just have some other business ventures that I got into, and I don't really need rap. So it dilutes the creativity. I think back then you had people like 50 that were obviously doing things just to get attention and just to get negative press, but 50 still had to put his boots on the ground. He still had to put in the work, and that's not the case anymore.
Yeah, and well, also on top of it, and not that she's on this list, she's not, but I think Cardi B is also proof that...
Surprising, by the way. Very surprising.
Surprising, by the way. Well, she's somebody who clearly started out in the whole social media thing, got into music, but then stuck in music, or at least, for now. I mean, maybe 5 years down the road, who knows, she'll go into acting or something.
Or a daytime TV show. I can definitely see that as a possibility.
Oh my God. I would I would DVR every fucking episode.
I thought you were going to say, get the fuck out of here. You would actually watch maybe the first 5 episodes.
I would watch if it kicked Ellen off the air. I would watch regardless, but I would watch every episode if it kicked Ellen off the air. Just not, I don't have any personal hatred toward Ellen. I'm just joking.
No, it's horrible. As soon as I saw the yodeling kid, I just said, all right, how many days until he's on Ellen? I think it took like 4 or 5 days.
Well, you know what? I would be more thoroughly entertained by Cardi B interacting with the yodeling kid than I would be by Ellen interacting with the yodeling kids. So even if Cardi B replaced Ellen, just did basically the same shit, still, I would stand Cardi B so much harder. But at the end of the day, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you're saying, and I feel like with the internet. Until you get to a point where you're as famous as Cardi B, it sort of makes sense to, if you're a content creator of any sort, to have as many irons in the fire as possible. So if you have 2 million Instagram followers, and all you do is just make dumb, stupid viral videos, it totally makes sense, especially since it's easier than ever to just fucking grab some dude who will produce for you for little to no money, of which there are actually lots of great and decent producers on the internet right now, and just be like, hey, produce a song for me and I'll just like rap over it and that'll just be my single. I mean, you have legit major label artists who are paying some of these fucking guys like nothing to produce beats. So it's like, what kind of expectations are sort of glass ceilings are we talking about people who have Instagram comedy accounts facing when it comes to releasing music and getting a viral hit? Nothing. I mean, I think Jake Paul pretty much proved that with having a number one song.
And I want to say that doesn't always translate. I think if you're going to be the, I'm not sure if you're familiar with Boonk or Fatboy SSE.
Yeah, I'm
it doesn't really translate because I mean he went viral for all the stuff that he was doing and then he put out music and it just hasn't resonated at all. So that's where I think there should be some credit given to the quality of the music. I don't think it's fair to just say you just get loads of attention and then you funnel out a song and you put it for streaming and then it automatically blows up. There has to be something unique about it, and that's the credit that I can at least give Tekashi in this case, that it just simply breaks down to there's a different inflection in his voice, there's an anger to it, it's not really emo, it's not depressing. He's found a niche within this generation where, like we've been saying, they'll all be grouped up together because of the aesthetic, the way they look, but there's something that he's doing, I think, musically that's working with people. It's just not all bullshit, 100%.
I mean, I agree. The music does have to sound good to the audience at the end of the day. But I will say,
it's not as stupid as we assume that they are.
No. I just think that it's not necessarily a stupid thing. I think it just comes down mostly to a marketability thing. Like Jake Paul and Cardi B are obviously going to be much more marketable than a Tekashi 6ix9ine, who is obviously going to be much more marketable than like a Boonk. Like he's obviously, even though Tekashi has lots of skeletons in his closet, we're talking about a guy who by comparison seems much more volatile and out of control and probably has Tekashi's been at the music thing for a while. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like he's not somebody who, sure, there were pictures of him that went viral because he like looks ridiculous, but he's always been somebody who has kind of been focusing on his music thing, not somebody who just kind of like merely happened into it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So let's move on to the next one over here, which I'm going to get into a Bhad Bhabie right now because we were just kind of talking about social media stars and people kind of going viral and then getting into music, which, I mean, I think Bhad Bhabie, aka the Catch Me Outside girl, is exactly that. Danielle Bregoli. She's a prime example of that, and she's somebody who seems to be seeing just a whole lot of success right now. Just for the fact that she has become this ridiculously popular and gawked at and hated but simultaneously admired social media star off that whole Dr. Phil thing. and now has entered the music game, and even without dropping too much in the way of a track or a single, has received an incredible amount of legitimacy just right off the board, just because I guess people are magnetized by her personality and her reputation. I mean, it all kind of in a way starts with the endorsement in the Kodak Black music video that she appeared in, and then we're talking about her getting signed to Atlantic Records. I mean, how many rappers out there are kind of toiling on SoundCloud and have incredibly viral tracks here and there, but are not sort of getting ushered in by the Atlantic Records set with a large record contract. So right out of the gate, she has an incredible amount of legitimacy before even really having lifted a finger. And the first few tracks...
Literally, because she's probably not writing
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the first few tracks she's come out with, like, actually sound kind of good. Now, is that because I think they're a mark of, like, great hip-hop or anything like that? No, not necessarily.
It's the other.
The thing is that the bar has been so lowered that she's living up to the expectations of what a rapper in 2018 needs to live up to. Mm-hmm. She's pretty much checking all the boxes. She's doing everything that she needs to do. So I don't know, as it may seem like she's completely illegitimate and shouldn't, even be a discussion in the hip hop conversation. To me, it sort of seems odd to sort of throw her into the bad rapper bank because, well, I mean, as far as standards today go, she's doing what she needs to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Gucci Flip is a record that I've heard the record for 3 or 4 years. I've listened to the same exact record, with Yachty on it, and it's exactly like you said. There's nothing really to discuss here. It's the only thing that I think worth mentioning is that she's had the benefit of at least having some attention taken away from her from the likes of Lil Tay, and I think Lil Tay helps her because there's this image that we have of these like young up and coming. I don't even know if Lil Tay raps, for Christ's sake. I have no idea.
Well, she's about to get into the the rap game.
Yeah,
from what I understand.
I hope she talks about what happened recently with her being exposed and her mother losing her job and all that stupid shit.
Yeah, that's actually like really sad for her mom.
But it's really funny.
but it's really funny, and I wonder where
what
the
fuck
hell
are y'all doing, making videos talking about. I mean, I'm 9 years old.
It's hard. I need to look back at her Instagram and sort of see when the last time she posted on Instagram was.
Oh man.
And honestly, like what's going to happen after this is just she's just going to start renting the cars.
Yeah.
She's just going to start renting them because chances are at this point, like it's probably to a point where she is making some money. Now she doesn't need to borrow the car from her mom's employer. Like now she can probably just actually rent the cars herself if she wants to. But still, man, what a weird thing to ask your boss. From again, what I understand when I was reading the article, it's like, oh, could my kids take some pictures with your, really expensive cars? Which, like, if that's the case, why do you need the keys? Why did you have the keys or whatever? It's like she's there revving the cars and like, where did she get that same stack of money that she's just like, like flipping out onto the ground every single time? Maybe that's fake as well. I really don't know. I mean, her mom might have that much green on her if she's sort of doing real estate in like
in a high-end area.
In a super high-end area, you know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, I'm actually kind of excited for Lil Tay to put out a mixtape or something because I feel like that's just gonna make everybody go absolutely fucking insane. Everybody's gonna go insane.
Which will usher in a lot of aspiring under 10 rappers. Like Lil Tay can seriously open up a floodgate of just the floodgates of hell. I mean, she's already
absolutely.
Well, I mean, that's what I feel like Bhad Bhabie did with her because I think she comes from her and Wo Vicky come from her ribs. I think it's the same. I think they're the same animal, and she's benefit. I find her more likable when I see her in my stories. I'm not as annoyed. I don't know if that works for her more or it works less. I'm not her demographic, so I don't think it matters anyway. But I see her. She's moving away from the whole Dr. Phil and all that because there's a maturation thing that's going on here. I know they had their little confrontation too, but there's something there that Lil Tay's filling in a void of hate. Like she's filling in this gap of hate that's supposed to go for Daniel Bregoli, but it's just not there anymore because we have this 9-year-old train wreck that we just can't stop watching. But it's going to open up something really dangerous, especially because she keeps emphasizing the fact that she's 9, because that's going to make somebody come out and say, I'm 7 years old. And then we're really headed towards somewhere where we don't really want to go.
Well, I think where we're headed toward is probably the death of all this stuff.
You think it's just going to get so ran into the ground, you think?
It's going to get so ran into the fucking ground. It's going to become so saturated because here's the thing. When anybody can do it, it's not special anymore. You know what I mean?
But I think that's been the case. That's been the case for a while, though.
Well, I feel like right now we're almost hitting a point where it kind of reminds me of, you remember in the 80s you used to have all that like awful like bad novelty rap all the time everywhere, and then I feel like that partially contributed to the necessity to kind of progress it into something just a little bit more hardcore that was more difficult to copy, because then it wasn't going to be something that people could just, you could just literally have a 9-year-old on Instagram just being like, yeah, I'm a rapper now, because at the end of the day, because that stuff is so controversial and because that stuff is so ridiculous, like the people who want to make actual music, the type of people who back in the day, like Waka Flocka or Lex Luger, who just literally created this sound, and not to say that they were the total originators of it, but created this sound just because they were passionate about it and they thought it was great. It's those people who are going to end up suffering at the end of the day, the actual artists and the actual creators, because they're going to find it more difficult to actually compete in this sound and in this niche and in this genre with I mean, how are you going to compete with a fucking 9-year-old who the entire internet fucking hates? You can't. You can't. That's especially in an age where you're talking about, it doesn't matter if you're good. What matters is if you're getting attention. If Lil Tay gets 5 billion hate streams on her new single, it doesn't matter that they're hate streams. All that matters is that it's 5 billion streams. And
ageism is working a lot. It's a big component here.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, the ageism.
Absolutely.
It's if I'm younger and I do it, it's just it just validates everything about what I'm doing. I'm doing it earlier than you, so this is somehow an indication that I'll just keep doing it, which is something that I've always argued against. I always argue against that, and I use an example that people probably hate me for, but I always use Illmatic as an example. Nas doing it when he was so young, and people think that that's like a mark of something, but how many Illmatics has Nas created? He's one of my favorite rappers of all time, but how many classic albums has Nas created since then? Because we always want to extrapolate it and say, well, if he did it at this age, then imagine what he's going to do in about 10 years or something. It's not always the case, but I think that's the narrative that they're running under. I'm 9 years old. Can you just imagine what I'm going to do when I'm 30? You're going to be working at Red Lobster when you're 30.
No, I mean, that is true. That is the case. And also, I mean, how many kids Nas's age when he was making that record have come out with records that are just as classic or just essential to the genre? So you're also talking about something that is probably only happened like a few times in a generation. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, and not even just Lil Tay. I still think Bhad Bhabie still has an effect to be had here, because her record, whatever it is, has not dropped yet. And I feel like even though Lil Tay could usher in like, oh, I'm a 6-year-old rapper, I'm a 9-year-old rapper, I'm an 8-year-old flexer, I'm the youngest flexer, I'm 2 years old. Even though she could definitely bring that in, I feel like Danielle is still like very much a Trojan horse, because as soon as her shit drops, like there are going to be all types of like teenagers who are just like, all right, that's it. I'm just going to be a rapper now. I'm going to be in the game. I'm going to be a rapper. And the thing is, like, there are a lot of people, there are a lot of Danielle Bergolis out there, which is exactly why she's so popular. Sure, there are a lot of people out there who just love to hate her, but there are also a lot of people out there who really identify with her, and who better to make music for that audience than people exactly like her, and as soon as she sort of like ushers that in and sort of inspires people to sort of copy her, like, I feel like it's going to, again, kind of create a point where it's going to create some anguish in the community in the same way that you saw like Macklemore get so popular so quickly, talking about important issues from a supposed white perspective and so on and so forth. You're going to see a lot of the same like unhappiness, over a Danielle Bergoli getting famous. And I think that could potentially contribute to, this attitude of, okay, it's not cool anymore. The moment everybody can do it, or the moment when people who we don't like can do it and they're sort of dominating in it, like then it becomes instantly uninteresting or instantly uncool.
To adults, but not to you're right, not to the children who want to be her.
No, not to the children who want to be her. Well, here's the thing. I think also simultaneously what's going to lead to things changing is that each generation of kids want to define themselves by something differently, a different sound, a different direction, a different aesthetic, a different something. And eventually this is going to become the old thing. And this is going to become, basically the stale thing to do. And, we'll sort of see whatever the next generation brings, I guess. But, again, I wouldn't necessarily say outright she's a bad rapper, an awful rapper. I think she's an average rapper. I mean, even though other people are probably,
which says a lot.
Even though other people are probably writing her shit, she sounds like she put in the practice on the track. Not that I think it probably takes a whole lot of practice to rap like Danielle Bregoli, but there were moments on like Cardi B's, earlier mixtapes where she sounded like really off fucking tempo. And clearly with whatever they're doing with Danielle, whether it's a performance thing that she kind of honed, or if they're just like editing the shit out of her vocals, she sounds like it sounds together. It sounds together. So let's move on to a rapper who I don't think either of us would put on this list, but J. Cole, who repeatedly, with every episode of this that we do, it's funny because depending on who we talk about, well, I guess what I want to try to say here is who we end up talking about in these lists depends entirely on like who just came out with an album, what rappers are new, what rappers are irrelevant now, who are basically the new players in the current landscape. And in every episode so far, album release or no album release, J. Cole seems to come up. Like J. Cole just has such passionate haters that just seems to follow him everywhere he goes. And I don't know. I mean, I think he's overhated, which is a term I saw somebody say the other day. Like, J. Cole doesn't blow me away. Some of his...
That sounds like a good album name,
yeah,
by the way.
Probably. J. Cole...
Overhated.
J. Cole could probably come out with a song called Overhated. And if he did a song about that concept, I would totally respect that. But, to me, he just sort of seems overhated. I don't quite get the J. Cole hate. I get that, he maybe falls a little short of the mark when it comes to making supremely deep music, according to some people, occasionally according to me. But I don't think he's making the worst music in the world.
Yeah, no, it's I think it's a generational thing. I think just like Lil Pump, obviously, we're throwing the 1985 track in here.
You think J. Cole's audience is old?
J. Cole's audience, I think, is mostly made up. If anyone taps into the 45, the 50-year-old head, J. Cole taps into that audience. He definitely does. Because he makes, because he creates characters like Kill Edward. That audience is smart enough to get what he's doing. They're smart enough to get the satire and what he's doing. But it's he represents something just like Lil Pump represents something. So the opposition automatically hates him for it. I mean, I think up until when he came out with this album, I think he mentioned this, that they were fuck J. Cole chants for like a whole year ever since him and Lil Pump had that little friction online or whatever it was. So he simply has taken on the face of old heads, even though, I mean, J. Cole's what? He's like our age. He's like early 30s, right?
Well, yeah, he's like the same age as Kendrick Lamar, and Kendrick Lamar has a very young audience. And I think that a lot of J. Cole fans a lot of his fans are younger too.
There's a wide net. There's definitely a wide net.
I think it's more of a probably more of a mental thing than a generational thing. I mean, you're right. If there is a younger rapper who's appealing to older heads, J. Cole probably is. Not the only young rapper to be doing so, but
no.
I think it's more of just like a mental thing. And I think it's really just more of his attitude that people must hate. Maybe people find him
it's condescending.
A little condescending, or just like pretentious, or, hateful toward what these people are doing, toward what younger rappers are doing. But after listening to a track like 1985, maybe it's, it's looking down his nose a little bit, but I don't even see that track as being like a hateful track. In fact, I think it's one of the better tracks on his new record.
Well, I definitely saw it as a diss. I definitely saw the record as a diss. That's one thing. I mean, It's a response. I mean, there was recently, were you able to hear, I think this dropped about maybe 2 days ago, YBN Corday, I think it's how you pronounce his name. He did a response. It was
his like response track, which I thought that was a good response.
I was expecting, because of the name of it, I was triggered already. I was triggered, old niggas. But when you listen to it, it was great. I love the barbershop setting, everything. I love the track. I listened to it like maybe 3 or 4 times. But I really feel like that's what it is. It's him being condescending. There's so many intelligent fans out there that they are quote unquote woke, and they're very intelligent. They're university, they go to university, and they're very smart. They're young, and they don't want to be told that the music that they listen to is making them dumber. They have self-awareness. And I think J. Cole gets hate from, I think, his strongest base, which is that the smart, the sort of mid-20s, that crowd. It's like, Jay, we're smart. We want you to ascend somewhere else. We want you to go somewhere else other than, shooting at these artists where you're totally safe here. Because if anybody comes at you, you can just, that's why you make a record like 1985. You're not sweating anybody challenging you. You're not going at somebody like just throwing out Joyner Lucas's name just for whatever reason, just somebody who can actually come at you and will actually come at you. You're playing the safe route, even though everything that you're stating is true. We can all agree it's true, but I think
because Lil Pump's response is
that's all it's going to be. So it works. Why not, right? He stamps himself as being the person in this generation, sort of like Jay-Z was the person with the no more auto-tune who stamped it and said, this is bullshit, let's stop doing this. And he's stamping himself into history by doing it. And I think that's really all that was important. That's all that was important to him. I saw he performed. What was that festival just from a couple days ago where he performed it on stage while Lil Pump was backstage? I'm not sure.
I wasn't paying attention to that. But what was the reaction?
No, I mean,
to that whole thing?
I think that's pretty interesting. I mean, they showed a shot of Lil Pump just in the back, just sort of nodding his head to it. I mean, I guess maybe mocking him a bit. But he was playing 1985, and then he cut it, and then he played the acapella to 1985 because he really wanted the crowd to listen. I think afterwards, it didn't have that. I don't know. You listen to it and you let me know, but it just didn't have that punch. Maybe the record's just not going to live for very long. But
I think the record's probably not going to live for very long because I think what he's responding to isn't going to live for very long. It's not like a universal theme. He's kind of responding to a very short trend. I mean, I think him responding to somebody like Lil Pump, whose initial diss toward him was pretty weak, to the point where I think most fans didn't even really remember it or pay attention to it by the time that J. Cole responded to it. But I think the other issue is not only that, of course, Lil Pump is going to have a stupid response to whatever J. Cole says, but simultaneously, what Lil Pump is and what Lil Pump is doing is not going to last for very long. Like, J. Cole himself is going to outlast this trend and what Lil Pump is doing. So it's going to sort of sound weird looking back to sort of, kind of hear you going at this kind of miniature, now irrelevant kind of a blip on the historical map, that really kind of you portray yourself as kind of being above.
Hey, I want to ask you something because I think that song, when it came out, it made me think of, do you think there's something to be said about the fact that all commentators, you included, we've been saying this for years. The internet's been saying this for years, but the automatic comment that you get if you say something like that is, shut the fuck up, you're just a hater, you're hating on these young people. But there's something to be said about, it's just what we give. It's something that we put in the hand of the artist that we consider to be like, you're the it guy, or you're like one of three, that you can say whatever you want, and because you've had so much success, you can speak from the podium. But so it's like, to me, it's like truth isn't really truth. It's just the messenger is where it really, that's what it matters. Because J. Cole didn't say that through the Kill Edward, through, everything outside of, the personal stories in KOD, the commentary is nothing refreshing. It's like, I know this already, but That's interesting to me. That's the online conversation. It's been the online conversation since the inception of the very first Little. It's always been that. But now it's like, finally, somebody said it. Someone finally said it.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, when I'm sort of negative toward, one of these newer rappers, I guess I have a bit, there's probably some of that getting thrown at me, but it's not that bad because I think there are a lot of people who are familiar with just my track record because while, yeah, like I could fall on the side of J. Cole, like on that 1985 track, like as unnecessary as I thought it was, I do think he brings up some decent points in the track, but simultaneously people know that I like that Lil Pump tape. And that's the thing, like I can like Lil Pump's music while understanding that like he clearly doesn't conduct himself in a very intelligent way. J. Cole conducts himself in a very intelligent way much of the time, but from what I've been able to observe. But I don't find his music as interesting, sort of like for those very same reasons that you were saying, like, oh, the commentary wasn't that refreshing and so on and so forth. And when that's kind of what you partially market yourself on, like, hey, my commentary is great. I make great commentary. Like, I'm going to go into your record expecting that and sort of having a high bar of expectation for that because, I mean, number one, you've built it up, and number two, there you have contemporaries who are doing really great commentary. And really, at the end of the day, I feel like those are the twofold issues that people have with J. Cole. It's either his attitude, or it's the fact that he's falling short of some kind of expectations that people have going into the record, given what not only him but also his fans, sort of seem to the narrative they push about him.
Another question. Okay, with KOD, obviously you hear a song like ATM, and ATM is you know what he's saying, and you hear a song like Brackets. Is that confusing in your eyes? I mean, is it confusing to make a track where you're obviously saying or motivate, which I think kind of like ATM in that you could sort of group it up together, and it's just like, yeah, get your money. That's all the message is, and you're driving yourself crazy. But then I'm gonna make a song like Brackets where I'm actually stressed out about my money, and I think there should be an app about what I want to pay, where I want my taxes to go to. Is that confusing because you have two different messages about money?
It wouldn't be the first time that J. Cole has been a little contradictory on an album. I mean, he himself has, made tracks where he sort of seems to fall on both sides of the fence with, oh, well, I'm being like a Mac daddy and I'm like sleeping with a lot of women, but also, I love my significant other and I'm trying to like
fold clothes for her.
So, yeah, exactly. Fold clothes and, eat cereal with the almond milk and that sort of thing, a more domestic J. Cole. So, clearly he falls on both sides of the fence on other issues as well. I didn't necessarily see Motivate and Brackets being polar opposites though, like conceptually. I mean, maybe in the most surface level sense, but I think when you get down to a lot of what he's saying on Brackets, especially when you're talking about him as a black man paying taxes into a system that negatively affects the types of communities that he came from, then I think you're really kind of getting to the core of a track like Brackets, and I understand what he's saying. I see what he's saying.
It's just two messages about it's two messages about money that both are very real, but at the same time it's like, does it have any room? Does it have any room on the same album? Is just what I wonder.
Well, that's another kind of issue that I have with a lot of J. Cole's music, which I don't know if it's that big of a problem with a lot of other people, but another issue that I have with some of his albums consistently is that I feel like he's hinting toward doing something conceptual, but when you actually look at the grander scheme of how all the tracks work together, like they don't really reinforce each other, or they don't really build off of each other narratively. Again, it sort of seems like that just on the surface, like, oh man, this looks like it's going to be a concept. It's going to be a concept. J. Cole's coming through with a concept, but then you actually like look at the way all the tracks work together, or rather don't, that expectation kind of falls flat, and not that you need a concept. You can just have a bunch of fucking tracks that all sound good together to have a good record. But to me, continually, I think that is something J. Cole implies again and again and again that this is going to be a concept, this is going to be an idea, this is going to be a theme, and it just sort of ends up falling flat because that just doesn't get delivered.
Speak for yourself, buddy. I can't wait to talk about Russ.
So, I mean, still considering all of that, I probably would not put him on this list because, I mean, he's somebody who, more than most people on this list right now, he's somebody who I would probably love to hear just no beat at all. You know what I mean? Somebody who I know as a rapper could totally go a cappella and he would sound good. He'd sound good on the mic. He would have a good performance. He'd have a great flow. He'd be consistent. He'd probably have a theme or topic or idea for that particular freestyle or something. I mean, would every bar be gold? Not necessarily, but he's somebody who, from the traditional standpoint of a rapper, I definitely see as worthy of more respect than a lot of other people placed, onto this list right now. But I just think J. Cole just continually falls short of expectations on the conceptual side of things and in the grander scheme of things when it comes to, actually making songs and making records. And that's the thing, there are a lot of rappers out there who are in the battle rap community, for example, but, being a really great battle rapper is not the same thing as being able to make a record, is not the same thing as being able to write a song. Which you've seen. There have been a lot of people who've tried to kind of transition sort of out of that circle and into a more sort of record industry type circle, and have kind of failed miserably because those talents don't necessarily translate to a commercial record all the time.
Yeah, and Joe Budden can even show you that from a reverse standpoint, making records and coming into the battle rapper, it doesn't mix either. Yep. So it's like it's one way.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about who you just brought up, Russ, who I also think somebody, what I want to try to say here is that I think he's also someone who gets hate for the same reasons that J. Cole does. And let's go to the I think what I believe is the quote Metro Boomin had about him after that comment that he had about producers ruining hip hop and so on and so forth. It's not even that his music is awful, but people just find him to be whack in spirit.
Yeah.
So just based on that alone, I feel like people find J. Cole to be that way as well, but Russ is obviously a much worse case. I feel like Russ is a sole example of really just kind of his what people see as his public attitude as being a huge turnoff.
Dehoosh. Just a dehoosh. just a hateable personality. Just so hateable.
And, let's dispel a bit of a myth here because I've been questioned on this numerous times. And people say to me, well, what's wrong with Russ? Isn't he just egotistical like a rapper should be? Mm-hmm. Isn't he just isn't that all this is? Isn't he just being egotistical? Aren't rappers supposed to be egotistical? Why are people hating Russ for being egotistical? Isn't that what he's supposed to do?
Yeah, I don't think it's being egotistical. I think he teeters between just being bitter.
Yes.
I think that there's a huge difference. Absolutely. And yes. I think it sides more to being bitter. When he made the comment about, I think it was about mumble rappers, where he was like, well, everything isn't like what you see. Like, you see all these people and you think they sell out all these venues, but they need 3 or 4 artists to sell out the venues that I sell out by myself. So in actuality, I'm really the guy that's winning. And it's like, well, why do you feel like you have to point that out? I mean, if that's working for you, there's, you could point out somebody like Tech Nine. I'm sure Tech Nine could have said that 8 years ago.
Yeah. Tech Nine could have said that. I think what Russ doesn't understand is that he appeals to a super niche group of listeners, mm-hmm. like who are very passionate and love his stuff.
Yeah.
But I think he's somehow mistaken that for like mainstream success, or like somehow being better or more popular or more relevant than the mumble rappers who he critiques and he goes at. You know what I mean? Yeah. No, I mean, you have some pretty big songs, but like it's not Gucci Gang. You know what I mean? Like, there aren't 11-year-olds quoting your songs as like...
You sound like a label exec. Russ, you got a lot of songs, but where's your Gucci Gang?
It's true though. It's true though. You know, 12-year-olds and 11-year-olds are not quoting your songs in like group chats as like a joke.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have a friend of mine who sent me a screenshot of a phone and said, "This is my 11-year-old texting her friends right now, and it's just back and forth. It's just Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang, Gucci gang."
Wow, Jesus.
And it's like nobody's doing that with a Russ song.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's doing that with a Russ song. Like, people love your music, but I don't know. Just be happy with the fact that you're not in the industry, because at the end of the day, like, you know, Lil Pump, I mean, as much as I like the guy's music, like he's probably just like getting chewed up and spit out as soon as like the sound that he's on becomes less relevant. You think the record label is going to stick by him and be like, you know, let's just develop him a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
There's a lot here.
You know, as soon as there's another 17-year-old who looks and dresses more ridiculously and has a bigger hit song than Lil Pump gets put on the back burner.
Yeah.
You know, right now you're totally on this independent, at least from what I understand, wave, and you're doing your own thing. And from what you say, you know, you do everything yourself. I do my own beats, even though your beats are just a snare and a fucking kick and a hi-hat and a keyboard. You do your own beats, you do your own mixing. Like, you know, I get it. It sounds like one person did all of it. But, I mean, it's working for you. So, I mean, I guess just enjoy that. Just do that. But yeah, you know, it's really that bitterness. And for what? Like, you're incredibly successful. What do you have to be so fucking bitter about?
Yeah. The music even shows it too, which is fine. But I think when there's a combination of your bitter comments and your music is braggadocious, that's where the ego comes in. It's totally fine for you to say it in the music, but since you're not a large artist, it sounds like you're talking to the people in the front row at your shows. You're not as successful as I am. What do you do? What do you do with your life? It sounds so personal, and it's just like I'm in a small room with you since you're big, but you're not as big as a Drake, even though your music is sort of under his umbrella. I believe it's like it sounds. I don't know. It sounds like you're talking to a few people. I don't know. It's off-putting. It's very off-putting. Even though I think he's skilled. I like a few. You know, he's gone viral with a lot of songs.
Yeah, he has.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. It's like, dude, just appreciate. Listen to DJ Khaled. Be grateful for the fact that you have the niche audience that you have. And there's no need. Look, at the same time, it warms my heart as somebody who's a part-time just old head that, you know, occasionally just hates and spews his bullshit about the fact that I'm just bitter about the music that's out there right now. I love the fact that Russ is in his mid-20s and he shows his discontent for the current wave of music. I appreciate it so much, but it's just when he goes into the N plus, when he gets into the finances of everything, it's something that 50 brought about in the game, and it's stuck with so many artists, and it just doesn't work for them when they start talking about finances and what they do. It just doesn't work for you. It doesn't work for everybody. Don't break the fourth wall. I don't want to know about that. I don't want to know about what you do.
Yeah, and I think his attitude just causes people to probably hyper-analyze his music a little bit harder than they would normally if he was just like chill or laid back, because while his songs are not terrible and his rap ability is not bad, it's not like what he's doing is entirely original. You know what I mean? And it feels like there's just like a lot of bitterness about just like, oh, I'm not accepted in the industry, and for what reason he thinks that that's the case, I really don't know. From him generally, I just kind of get this very just general vibe of just anger that he's not sort of respected in the hip hop community in the same way that other rappers are who might be doing similar numbers than he is. But I think at the end of the day, it's really just kind of an attitude thing. I think it's you attracting more flies with honey than fucking vinegar. Because I think at the end of the day, like when you get records and songs that are going platinum again and again and again and again, like if you just chill and you just like allow that to happen, like other people are going to see your success and gravitate toward that. Look at Post Malone, who still to this day, like a lot of people in the hip hop community don't like him. But he's still incredibly successful, and you don't see anybody turn down a fucking chance to feature on his records. You know what I mean? Because even if he's not the most likable guy, even if he's not sort of what people want to let into the hip hop community, and he's had some off color remarks about what he thinks about hip hop and so on and so forth. Like there's still
even with that,
a magnetic need. Yeah, even with that, there's still a magnetic need for rappers to work with him because he has so much attention on what he's doing. And to Russ's credit, he had a track recently, a feature recently with that JIDK kid. Who, you know, is a pretty good up and coming rapper. But the thing is, like, you know, he's maybe a little bit more on the lyrical side of things and might sort of see a point to a lot of the attacks that Russ levies, you know, at a lot of these younger sort of maybe more mumble rap type artists. But the thing is, like, I think there are some instances in which he can even find him working in those contexts, but now I feel like that door has just been entirely shut to him because he's just like, I do everything myself. I'm the best. I'm the best. I'm the best. All you guys do drugs and you suck. I hate that. I hate this about you. I hate that about you. And I feel like it's come to a point where he's just kind of attacking things about the culture, not because he thinks they're legitimately bad things, but just because he's trying to attack any soft spot because he just sees himself as like being outside of the castle and he's just like hurling rocks at it.
Yeah, he's blaming others. I feel like if he got to a certain point, he'd be similar to Kanye. I think he would have big Russ speeches at award shows. I definitely feel like he's of that ilk.
God, you're fucking right. That's such an astute observation.
Oh God, it would be cringe. It would definitely be cringe.
Let's move on to the next rapper now that you've said cringe. Because I think there are a lot of people who hate this rapper for reasons of cringe, and that's Logic. You know, I don't mind Logic. I think he's a talented rapper. I think he raps pretty well as far as flow goes. He's got impressive flows. He's got a bit of a weird thing going on with Joyner Lucas, where Joyner's like claiming that he like ripped off a bunch of shit from him, and people really give him shit on that biracial thing. Like I feel like they act like he says it more than he actually does. Like he does not bring it up as much as people say he brings it up.
He's been memed already.
That's you know, it's the memes are kind of dogging him. But I think there are a lot of people out there who are just kind of like really tired of him and just really don't like him. I mean, I got so many responses saying, "Yeah, Logic's the worst. I hate Logic," which again, you know, considering the inclusion of Russ and Logic here. You know, it sort of seems like even though we could agree, like, hey, you know, Lil Pump and Playboi Carti, they're not that technically sound. From a certain standpoint of technicality, we could argue, well, you know, these rappers are bad or they're not that good. But I think with the fact that you have so many people here mentioning Russ, mentioning Logic, two rappers who can clearly rap, a J. Cole as well, I think it just goes to show that, like, in so many respects, like, this genre can be, like, very much like a popularity contest. You know what I mean? Do I like your personality? Do I like what I perceive you to be as a person? Because if I think you're annoying, or if I think you're bitter, or if I think you're obnoxious in any kind of way, like, I can't fuck with your music. Because I feel like in a way that's part of what Logic is suffering from here. I don't know if you feel the same way.
Yeah, it's for me it's the most recently it's coming off of the Joyner Lucas conflict. It's coming off of it with his response to it. I forgot the name of the record, but his response was just like, dude, I am literally positivity. Like, you were speaking to the concept of positivity, so I don't even understand. I don't have the vocabulary to just articulate how terrible and how condescending and how just like disgusting that all is. It's like, dude, if you're going to address the guy, address him. Maybe it's legitimate that you stole the suicide idea from him, you know, maybe you did, maybe you stole like an artist, I have no idea, but the fact remains,
artists steal shit from each other.
It happens all the time. So it's one of those things where if you present yourself like Logic presents himself as sort of just like this lyrical rapid fire guy who many times just rips off other people's styles, but there's a certain Logic that I love. I love under pressure Logic. You know, I love when he sounds like that. I mean, particularly that record, not just that album, but, you know, I like gang related Logic. I'm not a big fan of the everybody Logic, even though he can make the biracial songs he can do it right. You know, he did that with Take It Back on that album. Like, I can tolerate the biracial Logic, but there's something about somebody who presents themselves in a certain way and then they sort of cower away when they're confronted with something. Like, I always feel like if you're this lyrical guy, then if somebody goes at you and you decide to respond, then go at them. Don't just say, hey, dude, there's a lot of negativity to what you're saying. Compete. Like, make a decision, Logic. Like, who do you want to be? I'm white, I'm black, I am positivity, Logic's identity to me is just, I don't know what he is. You know, so I think he belongs on this list because, like you said, personality, yes. He belongs on this list for that reason.
So you feel like even though, again, he has sort of those technical aspects down, personality does play a big role for you, and it is a huge turnoff. And
yes, because he's attempting to do what so many people who we consider to be legit rappers is he has a cause that he's fighting, you know, and apparently he's chosen suicide. He's chosen that, and it's a very noble cause, but at the same time you can take yourself very seriously en route to that. And I think that's what's happened here. I'm saving lives with my music. Out of the way. I am peace, love, and positivity. It's like, ugh. It's kind of gross.
Having a bit of a savior complex in your music can be kind of a turnoff. I think Kendrick is bordering a little bit on that lately, but not pushing it so hard that it's ruined his music or anything like that. But a savior complex can definitely be a turnoff.
So I have another question. So I saw your Bobby Tarantino 2 review, and I think you pointed out something that I believe to be true as well, you know, with regard to him just sort of blatantly just taking away other artists' styles, where it's basically a statement of, is that what they're doing? I can do that. I can do that. I can do that.
Oh yeah.
Where's that going? Where is the constant theme of him obviously doing this? Where's that going?
I really don't know, honestly. I think in a way, he almost sees that as like what a successful rapper is. I don't. I really don't know. Maybe in some kind of twisted way he sees that as creativity or proving yourself. I really have no idea where he would have even gotten that idea, because I can't even name another artist who is or was as mainstream as him, and it seems like one of their telltale characteristics is that they're like a chameleon, you know? Yeah, again, I just don't know where he would get that idea. I mean, you know, I guess you could say Lil Wayne with a lot of his earlier mixtapes, you know, bodying other people's beats and that sort of thing, you know, maybe that's a point of reference, but just sort of just copying some other rapper's entire style. I just don't really know where that comes from. And to me, that's kind of another mark against Logic. That's another thing that persistently has been a kind of obnoxious thing about his music. And I'm just not really sure what he thinks the appeal of that is. I mean, maybe it works for, you know, more surface level music listeners who, you know, don't really have that much allegiance to any particular artist, but they just like the way some certain songs sound, you know? So he's just kind of throwing tracks out there to be like, well, you know, this will work for the Kendrick fans and this will work for the Travis Scott fans and so on and so forth.
It's more of a marketing, a market to everybody, and that ensure my success, because I'm pretty sure Bobby Tarantino 2 did well. I'm not sure what the numbers are.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it did well too. You know, maybe not so well that he got a $30 million record contract, which there were some people calling out as not being true. But I'm sure it did well. Yeah, I mean, Logic is another rapper who technically I wouldn't necessarily say is an awful rapper. I wouldn't say is a terrible rapper. I wouldn't eagerly throw on this list, but he is another rapper who maybe not quite as much as Russ, definitely not as much as Russ. But he is a rapper who I think some people just sort of see as being whack in spirit. And I do think it does have to do with the copying. I do think it does have to do with like the little bit of pretension, despite the fact that like he's not wholly original. He's not that interesting. And, you know, also he does have a bit of a savior complex in his music too, especially on his previous record where, you know, you have the space themes and, You know, they're listening to the album that changed everything. We have to listen to the album, the artist that changed it all. It's like,
what was this space theme? Was that the one with the Thalia? Which one was that?
On the front cover, The Incredible True Story, where he's sort of like holding the sort of steering.
Right.
Yeah, he's flying some spaceship.
Yeah.
That's the one where the people who were on the ship were talking about, oh, what are we going to listen to? Oh, let's listen to the music, the artist that changed it all. The artist that saved the world.
Which, if you did it well, it could work. I mean, it could. It's creative. It's like, yeah, it's very self-congratulatory. It's like, yeah, whatever. But if you do it well, then we're in. You know, we're always in when you do it well.
If your music is so good that you literally are that artist, like I can't really argue against it. You know, and that's the thing.
Kanye could get away with it.
When Drake says some shit like that, or when Kendrick says some shit sort of on that super egotistical, I'm influencing everything, I'm changing everything kind of level, I can't totally disagree because, like, well, yeah, you kind of are, you know? But, like, in the case of Logic, that's just so not the case. Who out there is copying fucking Logic? Mm-hmm. You know, who out there wants to sound like Logic? Logic wants to sound like everybody fucking else. You know, so it's like, what is a Logic song? I know what his voice sounds like, which is probably the one telltale sign of his music that when I hear a Logic song, I know, oh, well, that's Logic. But who out there is really copying Logic? What does a Logic song sound like that no other song sounds like? There's no answer to that question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, you know, there is a bit of too much self-congratulatory too many self-congratulatory themes in a lot of his music as well.
You're just being negative, bro. I mean, whatever.
I'm just being negative. He's saving the world, exactly. And that's all there is to it.
You're taking the tools out of the heart surgeon's hands.
So let's we have a few more left. Let's get into the next one. Probably one of the more controversial rappers in the list over here, XXXTentacion. XXXTentacion, we've never even had a conversation or even a minor back and forth online about him. So I really have no idea what your take on him or his music is at all.
Well, X is, again, has all the looks, but sounds nothing like his quote unquote contemporaries. He doesn't sound like anybody. Last year, I think he really tried to corner the market on this, you know, on the suicide thing, which at some points you don't know if it's a cause that he has or if it's something that he's trying to really just profit off of, you know, with Save Me and with Sad. But my opinion about XX is he's capable of a lot of different styles. I mean, you saw in the XXL freestyle where he also took a shot at J. Cole. You see that he's got the potential to do different things, and I think he's one of the better examples of what it's hard for me to understand sometimes, or what it's hard for my ear to adjust to, is just how these newer artists are using melody. I think with Sad itself, with a song like Sad itself, it's something that I wouldn't have found myself to be a fan of, but I enjoyed. So I think he has a great ear for music. The hated part for me comes into the fact that he has to preface his album. It's just a part of him, but preface his album by saying that you have to open up your mind to this. He can very much be a cult leader. You know, he can. That's how cult leaders are made up. You know, it's like, adjust your mind. This is going to put you on a new frame of consciousness and enjoy. These are my thoughts. If
you're not getting it, your mind hasn't been adjusted.
Yeah, and we're going to be in the circle at 4. You know, if you don't want to join, then, you know, sip on. Yeah, I think that's where it comes in, and obviously the sexual, not the sexual stuff, the domestic battery, all that stuff. Which I wanna, which I saw you commented about all the Spotify stuff, but. Do you feel like he belongs on this list?
From a technical and an artistic standpoint, no, not necessarily. The only record of his I truly gave an awful review and that I thought was terrible was the one album where he's like rapping the least. You know what I mean?
Was that 17?
That 17 record where it's just kind of like a weird emo folk record where the songs just barely sounded even finished and awfully recorded, and it just sounded like generally terrible to me.
Yeah.
There were a few rap-y songs on there, but it's barely even a rap album. really when I first got turned on to him and I was mostly enjoying his stuff was when he just kind of had those early hyper aggressive, screaming like, just like 6ix9ine, those early SoundCloud singles that went super viral. And I was like, okay, this is like fucking turn up and fucking then go down to hell,
Yeah.
It was like, there was something really extreme and animalistic and crazy about it. I saw a lot of the Death Grips fans fucking with some of it at first because a lot of his like earlier songs, like sipping tea in your hood and that sort of shit.
Look at me, yeah.
That shit went super like viral, but also like there was like a meme component to it as well. He also had that What in Tarnation song or whatever that had like a meme album cover. So clearly he's like a rapper who's very conscious of memes and the meme community and memes in music and is not afraid to sort of incorporate that into his stuff if he wants to or if he needs to, from like a marketing perspective or to just sort of like add a bit of lyrical flair to whatever he's doing. But like looking at a lot of his earlier tracks, like pre-Revenge, pre-17, like all those Lucy type tracks that he was just like dropping because he has a lot of singles, just like a lot of random drops like for a long time before he actually started releasing stuff on a much more commercial level. He has quite a bit of versatility in his back catalog. You have those hyper aggressive Look at Me type tracks, which it seems like nowadays he's trying his hardest not to do another song like that, which is interesting because that's almost like the antithesis of what you would expect from an artist cut from that cloth. You know what I mean? Probably for the rest of his very short-lived career, we're going to see Tekashi 6ix9ine making the same song over and over and over.
Yeah.
It seemed like very early on, like once X got big off of those tracks, he did not want to make another song like that again. I think that's in a way as awful 17 was, that was partially an attempt by him not to make the same song over again. Not to make the same kind of music over again. It's like I'm big now. People are expecting me to make a certain type of track, the type of music that I got viral off of, but I'm going to hit them with a left hook and do something completely different, do something completely outside of their expectations and, do like these sad guitar songs. But again, looking into his back catalog, there's quite a bit of versatility. You do have those more aggressive tracks. You do have boom bap type tracks and jazz rap type tracks and tracks that are more ignorant, tracks that are more conscious. So artistically, I do think there's a lot to him. And I think that's also the case with his newest project, the Question Mark project, even though there are clearly some songs on there where he's just like jerking off and bullshitting, like that I Don't Even Speak Spanish song, LOL. Which is like one of the worst tracks I've heard all year. There are some tracks on there like rap tunes and like almost like punk and rock type tracks that go over pretty well. And I don't know, if I have a hard time struggling to put him on this list, it's really only for the reason that he just refuses to be a rapper and simply a rapper. You know what I mean? Like when I hear him on a track or when I hear a feature, it sounds fine. It sounds decent. He's okay. I'm not like necessarily blown away or anything, but it sort of seems like he's trying to define himself by much, much more than that artistically. Does he always do it well? I mean, I think he misses more than he hits a lot of the time because I think in a way he's kind of like he's dabbling in everything, but he's not necessarily a master of anything. You know what I mean? He's not doing any one thing so incredibly well that it's like, whoa, holy shit. Because it's like he insists on not being pigeonholed for whatever reason. And I sort of wonder how long he can get along doing that, because I feel like building an audience you could sustain yourself off commercially kind of, I don't know, at least by prior, because things are probably changing in the age of streaming, by prior knowledge, from what you and me know, being younger and sort of listening to records and following artists in the music industry, there needs to be some kind of stylistic cohesion or consistency there. You know what I mean? To keep the audience coming back. Mm-hmm. But he just sort of seems to be all over the fucking place, and he continues to be successful despite that lack of consistency, but who knows for how long.
Yeah. Being an artist to say, I don't want you to pigeonhole me if I get popular for this certain thing, but I'm going to completely change it. That's great in theory, but it can be very harmful towards people. People need to identify you for something. They have to figure out, I mean, you'll always have your core, but there's a certain style that you have to have where people recognize it. That has to be a thing. And I think to be an artist so much to that fault of, I'm going to recreate myself, because when he was making those hype records, I mean, what was the time between that and 17? Maybe like a year and a half, maybe. That's a very short period of time. Like, I think you have to pace yourself and take something out of the 6ix9ine playbook and just keep at it. Maybe 6ix9ine will change. He probably won't, but that's probably something that he could have benefited off of. I also don't think he's very prolific. I don't think he's going to be. I think everything is going to be pretty spread out, and you're not going to get a lot of music from him, which is probably what's going to carry him out, I think, a few more years longer than all the other people in his age bracket, I believe. I think he'll stay in music a whole lot longer because of that reason, and because he wants to recreate himself every now and then. I certainly don't want to hear any more records like 17. I don't want to hear that anymore. And but I think that's the audience that he speaks to. He speaks to the audience of, sort of in the way that Cudi speaks to that audience. He speaks to the audience of the people in the back of the class, and of course our friend Hobson. They're all in that same group. I think they have the same audience pretty much. People that see themselves as underdogs and they feel like they need some sort of support, but I don't think it's as extreme as Logic and his hero complex. I think I'm just like these people, so I'm making music for these people, whereas Logic looks at it like, I'm gonna save these motherfuckers because they need me.
Yeah, I think I think X is probably appealing to that same crowd, but with a much darker edge. Logic is kind of like the weekend camp youth group, administrator of the rap game. It's like, hey, things are hard, but we're all in this together. XXXTentacion is just like the dark alleyway, sort of like goth kid drug dealer. Who is just like smoking, like chain smoking, just like, what the fuck is the point of life? You know what I mean?
When I cut myself.
And you say earlier that you didn't sort of see the appeal in, or you didn't quite get the whole Little Peep phenomenon. He very much appeals to the same group of people. People who, in my negative coverage of his stuff, responded to me and said, hey, well, I personally have had like a lot of emotional and addiction issues, and his music sort of speaks to me on that level. So he very much has like a bit of a sad outcast kind of vibe to his music as well, which I think X probably most likely appeals to that same group too. I think with X, a lot of the hatred toward his stuff comes from just merely, again, his reputation, his personality, the fact that he needs to throw a caveat before each record, just to be like, hey man, if you're not open to this, it's just such a bad look. The thing is, like, if the music's good, the music's good. It's going to speak for itself. You know what I mean? Not only that, but I mean, maybe there is reason to kind of argue for what he's saying, because a lot of what he was delivering on that album wouldn't necessarily appeal to strictly like a hip hop audience. But I feel like you've already kind of broken the floodgates on that on 17. You know what I mean? If people are still fucking with you after 17, then they're clearly willing to hear almost anything from you. You know what I mean? Like if the transition into this like sad bedroom recorded folk music didn't sort of ruin your career, like if you make a rock song or something with like a little bit more of a pulse, like I don't think it's going to like, hurt your numbers or anything like that, because it seemed like that interlude, a lot of it was emphasized on, okay, well, this is a more alternative sound, okay? So just be ready for that. And it's kind of interesting. Consistently in the rock community, there's always this discussion of like, oh, rock is dead, guitar music is dead, it's dying, nobody likes guitar music anymore, it's old hat, just old people like it. But simultaneously, you have these dudes like Kid Cudi and X, and there's some other rappers out there too who it sort of seems like they're doing everything they can to find ways to work guitar into their music. I mean, even Brockhampton is an example of that, as they have like a few guitar songs on their records. So it's like there's kind of like this new wave of rappers out there who are like not afraid of the guitar and use it quite often. And it's almost like this discussion of guitar music and rock music being dead is sort of being had completely outside of that with like absolutely no understanding that there's kind of this mini trend within rap right now where they're like, yeah, we're going to actually just end up making rock music.
So in the future, with last question on him. So in the future with him, do you think he'll be making anything that sounds like rap at all by the end of his career?
You know, I think for him going forward, he's probably just going to continue to balance what he does with a million other genres. At the end of the day, what I would really like to hear from him is just songs that sound a little bit more finished, you know, or just something that sounds like he's just put a little bit more effort into it. There was a lot on that record, on his newer record, even though I think it was an improvement over 17 that sounded like it was just super effortless and off the cuff. And, you know, if you're going to have some kind of preface at the start of your record about how fucking serious it is and how I need to open my mind to what's going to be going on it. And then there are multiple parts on it where it sounds like you didn't even take the track that seriously.
Yeah.
It's kind of a turnoff, and it's a bit of an inconsistency. Like, there's no reason to have tracks like that in your record if you're going to kick the whole thing off being like, okay, man, it's going to be a really deep experience, okay? And if you're just not open to it, if your mind's not open, if you don't like it, it's just because your mind's not open, okay?
But it's going to be minimal. I think you should have thrown that word in there, maybe. It's minimal, okay. It may be unfinished, but it's deep, bro.
All right, let's get to the last person on the list here, who I actually don't have a whole lot to say about personally, and that's Rich the Kid. You know, I mean, I could potentially see myself throwing him on this list, and only for the reason that, honestly, I could not pick him out of a lineup. I really could not. After hearing multiple Rich the Kid features and multiple Rich the Kid songs, like, what is your style? What is your sound? What is your voice? What is your anything? I really have no idea. I feel like in a lot of ways he's kind of, for me, replaced Big Sean as like hip hop's most non-essential character. You know, because for a moment I just thought like,
Big Sean gets so much hate.
Really? Yeah, you know, I mean, I think he's gotten a little bit better. I think he has gotten better. You know, I think Big Sean.
I think that Control verse ruined his career, but
yeah, a little bit. You know, I think he has grown into himself a little bit more since the Control verse, and has made music that I think has proven that he's a bit more essential than he was, you know, earlier in the decade. But I'm just like not really seeing the necessity for a Rich the Kid right now. Like, what are you bringing to the table that nobody else is bringing? I really have no idea.
Yeah, the same. There isn't. There's not much for me to say about Rich the Kid. First time I heard Plug Walk was on Snapchat. First time I heard it, which, hey, he's getting some sort of a push from somewhere, and getting a Kendrick feature is, I mean, that's pretty big too, but I don't think he belongs on the list because I just think he sounds like the flock of everyone. I don't think there's anything really that stands out about him. Was he on the lower end of votes, or?
He was on the lower end of votes, you know, but I think there's a point at which where you become so generic or you become so average that you literally don't stand out in the crowd, and that in and of itself becomes like a huge mark against you, because then it's just like, well, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, like, well, why are we here? All right, I'm going to leave it at that. This has been our Worst Rappers in the Game Currently podcast. I want to thank D-Respect for coming on and commenting with me and taking part in this gauntlet.
The most consistent podcast in the world. I'm so happy to be a part of it.
All right. Again, we're going to link to his stuff, his social media, his YouTube channel down in the description. And thanks for listening, everybody. Have a good one. Forever.